Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Darksiders 3. So we were introduced to the DLC, the Crucible, at this point, so logically, particularly playing on story mode, you should be able to pass at least the first level of the Crucible. This is just an arena, and really it could be the exact same level design as the Crucible in the first two games. And if it's exactly like the first two games, that would make a lot of sense. This character seems a little new. I don't recall this guy being here. But yeah, waves of enemies will happen. If you can get through the waves of enemies, you will get some kind of reward.
Fury! I see you received my invitation.
What is this place?
Welcome to the Crucible! I named it myself. Here, every warrior gets what they deserve. To the victors, the spoils, and to the weak, an early grave. The more enemies you slay, the farther into the Crucible you may pass. Should you meet an untimely end, your journey will come to a close. All you had earned will be lost, and you will begin the challenge anew. That is, unless you take advantage of progress points activated along the way. But be warned, Horseman. Using a progress point will keep you from fully completing the challenge, assuring your absence from the pantheon of greatness. If you accept the offering, your journey into the Crucible ends. But if you decline, you stay the course with the promise of an even greater reward.
So we have a Crucible Stone. Each wave has a starting score value based on the difficulty setting, increasing by plus 50 every 5 consecutive waves. Avoiding all damage during a wave will increase the score by 250 for a normal wave, or 650 for defeating a boss wave. Your score resets if you die or quit the Crucible. 1,000 points equals 1. I don't know what that symbol is supposed to be. 1 silver coin.
Shall we proceed?
Now, inherently, I kind of love the idea that there's a Crucible element here, instead of them trying to have online play, and then eventually the concept from every game having online play turned into the concept of everything being completely focused on online play, player versus player, and then eventually everything having online play, player versus player, with microtransactions. But inherently for this game, still the Crucible is this extra thing that you have to pay for, and it doesn't quite work. In the first game you would have similar areas where you would be attacked by groups of people, and even in this game we've had areas where we've been attacked by groups of people. So giving us too much of that by adding the Crucible isn't really the best idea, and that's what this will boil down to. So generally speaking, if I was just playing on my own, I would only start to even think about doing the Crucible until near the end of the game or after beating the main game. But the game logically told me about the Crucible now, so I should try it now, but I probably will only try it once. If an Undying Shard's effect triggers during the Crucible, the total score gained up until that point is reduced by 50%. Changing difficulty at any point will reset the score to 0 for that wave. Consumable use other than Nephilim's Respite during the wave will decrease your score by 125 per item. And I assume if you're using a consumable, you're not getting it back at the end of the playthrough. So that would be very expensive. In a lot of ways, it does seem like the Crucible is designed to be just some way in which they say, well, you could always play more of the Crucible after you've done everything else in the game. when really they should just say, well, play the game a second time if you want to play it more, or run around and find all the collectibles or more collectibles. I'm not sure that the collectibles in this game aren't somewhat randomly generated, and I'm not sure that you can't just constantly upgrade things, even if there's not really a reason to upgrade things. We could go with Who Are You as an option. Here we have a nice in-engine image of Fury.
So, who are you exactly?
Why, I am Targon, champion of the Gilded Wilds, triumphant herald of the Shining Citadel. Surely you've heard of my legend.
The Shining Citadel is what they call heaven.
Well, the Horsemen have long been absent from the world. It's to be expected. What matters is that I am the respected overseer of the Crucible, which has tested the mettle of countless warriors throughout history. None have bested it, save myself.
We shall see how long that remains true.
Which, ironically, I would say that's probably not the case, unless this is the first time any of the Horsemen have done the Crucible, because you would expect that War would have beaten the Crucible. So we have only one respite at the moment. And I guess the question is going to come down to, do we have the respite refilling? Yeah. And I'm hardly playing particularly well. This is a nice little warm-up idea. And this feels like this is a way in which you can change things up, and I don't feel like the previous games had this as an idea. Problem definitely is going to come down to, though, that the cheap shots, that these like little flying bugs hit us, or that we're going to run into a lot of enemies that we haven't even seen in the game yet. Like, even if they started throwing the little the bomber characters at us, that could be a real problem. These characters are a problem. Changing things up a little bit, I imagine this may be somewhat of a boss fight. Well, if we're not getting a boss fight in if we're not getting a boss fight in 5, then we're getting a boss fight in 10, I would imagine. Okay. So that gave us pretty much an insignificant amount of health, and was more time than it probably was worth it. If we continued and did another 5, I imagine we could get past 5, but I don't think I really want to engage with this.
You closer to the pinnacle. Will you stop here, content in the spoils of your victories so far? Or will you forego these meager earnings and instead carry onward for a chance at even greater riches?
Alright, so let me see your wares.
The Crucible is not without reward, Horseman. As you progress, you will receive tokens, which you may exchange with me for exceptional goods. Or you can continue to wager them on future attempts, ensuring a sizable payout. Should you survive. Take a look, Horseman. I may have something that interests you.
So, it seems like some of these you have to get to wave 25 before you can get it, or wave 50 or wave 75. All of these things seem to require more tokens than I really have just doing that first 5. Noticeably here, if we got up to wave 50, we could get the Chaosbringer's armor, or Respite Shadow armor at 75, or Panoply of Champions armor. Even that armor, though, at wave 100 is not particularly that much better as far as the stats. It definitely feels more like skins and that we're just playing dress up with Fury. You can get more unfocused augments also through this, but I'm not sure that you couldn't just get all of this. You definitely could get all of this as far as ingredients outside of this doing the Crucible. And if you didn't pay for the DLC, and this is the only way you can get these armors or these upgrades, then that really just highlights that the game will be imbalanced for people who do take any of these armors. It will probably be easier. Let's continue a little bit.
The greater choice for the greatest warrior.
But yeah, that first 5 wasn't going anywhere. We haven't really been very far with the game though, so I expect that you're gonna fairly quickly start to run into enemies we haven't even seen in the game. Like, I doubt it's programmed to only show us things we've seen before. Like, we may not have seen even those enemies before. Yeah, I don't think we've seen ice throwing versions of this monster, even if we have seen this monster. But you're not getting a like combo reward or anything like that. So just having augments on your weapons later on in the game that would give you more potential and give you more souls for killing enemies would make this experience easier and better. And I have a sneaky suspicion that if I beat level 10 and then quit at level 10, which is what is likely to happen, I feel like that's going to make a checkpoint where I can then start at level 10 the next time. Definitely feels like there's room for failure now. That was kind of a high upgrade. And once again, we're fighting people we just have never even seen. I guess it would really suck though if you can't stop after 10 and you have to actually go to like 15 or 25. See, and that barely is just slightly below what I would have needed. to buy anything.
Each triumph brings you closer to the pinnacle. Will you stop here, content in the spoils of your victories so far? Or will you forego these meager earnings and instead carry onward for a chance at even greater riches?
So,
Take a look,
the thing here
I may have something that interests you.
is if it was 1,000 for one token, the transference hasn't happened yet. If I'm wrong and it was 100 for one token, then we could buy quite a bit. But I guess we'll say perhaps I'll take a leave, accept winnings, and depart. Interesting. So you could just leave the winnings and maybe come back later.
There's no shame in caution.
Currency of the Crucible can be exchanged with Targon for crafting materials, items, and armor. So yeah, I think at this point now, we have to go show me your wares.
Take a look, horseman. I may have something that interests you.
And so yeah, you would have to either get to wave 50 and grind up towards that.
Very well.
So yeah, it definitely seems like you either engage with this and spend a lot of extra time playing what is not the actual game, or you just don't spend any time on it at all. Yeah, and that definitely doesn't feel like I really want to spend that kind of time. Okay. So getting back to the actual story, we had done all kinds of level ups and things and upgraded our armor and everything. We now have the new lightning ability that lets us do a different attack with a different weapon for Y, and has this kind of hover effect that almost certainly is only useful when there is a whirlwind. But yeah, storyline wise, even though you were teleported after beating avarice or greed, storyline wise, I think the idea is that you were supposed to run down this path in this somewhat interconnected world. It is an interesting question, certainly, which is better, to have interconnected worlds that are just all connected by tunnels, or to have interconnected worlds that are connected by big open platforms. There's quite a bit of holes here that you're being encouraged to fall down. But I guess the reward is given for not falling down. Let's see if hitting... Well, I was wondering if perhaps getting hit by the bombs would have led to less damage in lightning mode. At a certain level, the idea is now that we should have this lightning electric hair. And walking water doesn't electrocute yourself, which that totally makes sense. A lot of collectibles. It definitely feels like we're just walking on the outer perimeter of the dungeon, the museum area. I kind of wonder if maybe you couldn't walk through booby traps at that point in the lightning form. So we started by coming in at that entrance and seeing this gate, and we saw that there was a thing here, but we couldn't reach it, and we've just gone full circle. So the entire secondary dungeon there was just a loop. Interesting though, because I don't know if we really defeated Wrath, or if we're going to end up fighting him again. I don't think we actually did defeat Wrath. And it does seem like very often here we are looking for one person and then getting turned around and running into a different Seven Deadly Sin. Plus, we also know there's a demon or something. So now we've opened up a shortcut. Opening up these kinds of shortcuts definitely gives the implication that we are coming back to these areas at least once. I guess if I'm going to pick an opinion, I like the narrow pathways because it keeps a more structured experience, but they've painted themselves into kind of a bad corner by setting it in a human world and then having the horsemen be relatively tall and big compared to humans, and enemies are definitely taller and bigger than humans. So had this been more of a small or medium-sized cave type area that was, say, instead of hallways being as narrow as we're seeing them here, if they were 2-3 times as wide, that would probably be better. Wide enough that like one dash would get you a third of the way from one wall to the other, instead of one dash being an entire length of one way. I really walked into that one, didn't I?
Back to this enchanting scenery. You take me to all the best places.
At least we're better prepared this time around. But feel free to leave any time, Watcher.
You wish.
So there's Sloth, and we fought Wrath over there, so we are definitely going in circles. I can't help but feel like the game is fairly small. This guy looked deadlier than he really is. I imagine he'll drop some sliver of adamantium. Which I guess the idea here is that maybe these monsters that we're fighting have been infused with adamantium. You'd think that this like sign here would be like a fire extinguisher or something, instead of it just being a poster. Nothing about the hanging pods. And I guess if I fell down now, I could actually get back up. At least I think I'm fairly safe to do that, so let's do that. Yeah, I kind of have a feeling that this game, particularly considering the years that have passed, is just not as big. It just doesn't have enough new concepts. Like, it's leaning into being familiar, and I appreciate that, because it could have also been very awkwardly full of just too much new stuff, like the second game did. There was a fairly large amount of people that were not super happy. That doesn't work. There. I didn't realize there was a charged attack here. Interesting. But yeah, it does seem like you just can go in circles. And so this is, I think, connecting to a totally different area. Let's check it out. Alright, so that was our surprise attack from these sections. Inherently, the problem, though, with following a side path like this is if I'm supposed to be fighting Sloth, if that's really what I'm supposed to be doing, and following one path, inevitably there is going to be some item or power-up that is going to lead us to an upgrade. The layout is a little rough. It's not quite at that Metroidvania style where the actual path options are really very gated and you can really only go in one place. I don't know if there's even another exit out of this room. This is an example of the cave being probably a little too big for something that is literally just one room. Alright, well I guess I take that as evidence that I was supposed to come down and I was going the right direction. Yeah, I could go fight things, certainly. I don't know if there's any value in fighting more things, though. Almost can't find it. A map would help, is I guess the thing to take from this, is that they seem actively uninterested in giving you a map, which would have been fairly helpful. I want to keep an eye out on just how hard these enemies hit, because I could be taking more damage than I really realize. Alright. But yeah, far too often now we've had to look one way, turn around, and then decide to check out the other path. These flying bugs need to be killed by targeting them. And here we can see an example of where I think they intentionally set that up so that you can severely damage him without hurting yourself. But if you were going to set up a gimmick like that, then it really feels like you should have you should have done that a lot earlier. Yeah, it does seem like at some point we are going to just get an ability to walk on air or fly. I don't think we have that ability yet, but that seems questionable how you would access that area. I also don't, I hope, and it probably would be a little crazy, I hope we're not going to hit a point where we have to jump up in the air with that kind of flame attack and then switch to the lightning attack and hover down as far as the lightning hollow. That's a different kind of goo that I assume is used to blow up that. So I think I see what's going to happen here. We're supposed to learn about putting this guy in the purple goo, picking up this guy, and then throwing it that way. Blow up. And that should be a path. Let's look at what's over here. Interesting, it's nothing, it's just this is where the characters came from. So, one thing I'd want to know is, let's pick this up, let's run this way, and just see how long we can hold it before it explodes. That's about as much. And the explosion doesn't feel like it actually does a significant more amount of damage. So it doesn't feel like you have to have a preference of the blue, purple goo versus the red goo. Yeah, I guess in a certain way you could criticize this game for potentially being a little lazy or trying to ease itself back into being like Darksiders 1 and Darksiders 3. It doesn't feel as ambitious. I know, or I vaguely recall that there was some trouble with its development, that they were having trouble with the fast moving whip attacks, which I imagine they got somewhat obsessed with. I don't feel like the game really would have changed so much if you had given just a different sword to Fury. I could see giving her something like a rapier, a very thin, quick-moving sword or two, and you could have Fury implied with that kind of attack. Also, if that was such a big deal. We're not really seeing an increase in new in the amount of enemies around an area like this. In areas, like, it's really just the same old number count. Yeah. It seems fairly obvious that at some point we are going to get an ability to freeze the explosive bombs, or that is a shortcut that's going to open some other way. These monsters are not too different from, like, the necromorphs in Dead Space. Yeah, there definitely feels like there's a bit of an influence there. But I'm not going to complain about that. I'm complaining more about the variety. Even the variety of environments now has gotten a little repetitive, because we keep going in circles. Like, I was expecting to see a lot more surface level stuff. Let's see. And now we've got a water level. Do we have to breathe as one of the horsemen of the apocalypse? There's a luminous visage that can increase our attack. I guess inherently you don't have to breathe and you can just swim forever. The fabric and the whole sash thing not working particularly well underwater. Not working particularly well as a way of, like, hiding, seeing Fury's butt, which who cares if you see her butt or not. And not working particularly well, I would say, once you don't have gravity affecting it. This is interesting because I guess you were supposed to be swinging around that area. I noticeably didn't look, though, everywhere I could have looked in that room. So I may have missed something. May have missed something fairly big. But do I want to swim back? I don't think so. And if these mud shapes now are indicators of potential danger, I guess the question is there something else we've been seeing in the game that could have enemies spawning from it? Okay. So I think that was the room that we came in. I would almost certainly bet that that's the case. So let's take our I think the guy either jumped over there or fell in the water and died. Yeah, at some point we may just have an ability to unlock doors. We may rescue a human. We haven't seen enough humans to really make it feel like they're actually much of collectibles. But yeah, we may rescue a human that teaches her how to open doors or unlock doors. I guess there is a statement on balance that if I was playing balance mode, if I had even been able to play the game on balance mode, maybe these individual enemies would have been more of a challenge, and as more of a challenge, maybe it would have felt a little more logical to not have the high amounts of enemies that you would have seen in previous Darksiders games. Interesting how the water goes out. I guess we should go into the other mode and see if the water goes out around that too. Alright, let's see. Nope, it does not put out the water fire. Alright. B to dive. Let's dive lower so we can get a better angle on everything. Yep. This is just the same area, so we didn't miss anything. Yeah, it is a weird situation, certainly, where I literally would not feel it necessary to complain at all if I had a map for the level design. But because they don't give me a map and the level design is a little wonky, it's very circular and definitely not focusing on any kind of like square grid designs, anything that would feel subconsciously obvious or easier to engage with. The problem now also that has happened is now that we have this double jump, there's always going to be that feeling that the double jump is necessary, when a lot of times the double jump is not necessary, or in this case I just straight up messed myself up. And yeah, only time you're even gonna see Fury's purple hair is when the water puts it out from fire mode at this point. I'm wearing different armor, so she now has kind of this orange armor look to her on the back, but honestly it doesn't seem like it changed any of the visuals much in the front. There's just this very soft orange vision on the front of the armor. Like, I really didn't even notice that it visually had changed. Yeah, you have to be careful getting back to just basic chain swinging at that point. But there's almost certainly no way that that basic chain swinging alone would have let you get to this point. Right, so that opens that gate. And that seems to be the only thing it does. Let's go down here and check. Yep, this gate is still locked. It probably is an actual statement against Fury's personality, as she's not even willing to touch things with her own hands and instead uses an energy gauntlet. That is something that is also helpful for gameplay reasons, but it does some character development also. Right. So that also created a whirlwind where I can use that ability. But I can't help but assume that this is just leading us to a temple. using the Y attack on those mud characters is probably a smart move. Definitely feels like there should be some level of destructible environment. And it definitely feels like you're like you just hit a propane tank, for instance, there, and it didn't explode. That feels like that's something you could have added to the game. Although arguably explosive barrels in any form are pretty played out in video games. I really need to start seeing some backstory as to why all the demons here are dead. And I really would like them to start explaining what the time frame is here. Because this is pretty ridiculous that we've been playing for hours and hours now, and I'm still not sure if this is after the events of Darksiders 1 or Darksiders 2. I think Darksiders 2 very possibly, since it took place outside of Earth for the most part. I mean, there really isn't a lot of reason to even assume that Darksiders 2 took place during the events of Darksiders 1. I guess the question is, what should I do with my crystals? We probably have enough to try and get something that, like the demonic Leviathan, upgraded more to get more lurchers. It's probably not really worth it. We got a lot of small healing shards, but I don't know if maybe 15 is the max. We need more fragments of adamantium. Having a couple of slivers of adamantium is not enough. Let's see, we could open this first, because I seriously doubt that's going to do anything. And then I kind of don't feel like it matters enough. So I think I'll just crack all of these. And that gets me up to 15,000. Which, okay. Where are we now? I guess we'll see if we can get to level 10 on strength and see if that hits kind of a maximum, or if all of a sudden you need like 2 attribute points to get your physical damage up. Like, we're still looking for physical damage increases.
Take your time.
Yeah, if I was playing a higher level, Undying Shards would probably be very useful. Also, Undying Shards really highlight how the hardcore mode is probably not as hardcore of a mode as you would think, because it really would just be a mode where you have to use Undying Shards as much as possible. I could buy slivers of adamantium, but there's actually a limit there, come to think of it. Yeah. Not close enough that I'd want to get Storm Hollow Armor. I'm not sure I really want to get Storm Hollow Armor anyways. But a Rejuvenation Core is not a bad idea.
I knew you couldn't resist.
And then passive buffs on other items later on might be worth it. But I don't think it is now.
This will be fun for both of us.
Do we have enough to level up multiple times? Yes, we do. And I think that is the better way to go about this.
As you wish.
Alright. So. 10 on that. 3. 4. We'll get these up to 5. We'll get this up to 10. And then we'll start putting more and more, I think, into the damage aspects. Otherwise. Now that rejuvenation core, I feel like I just acquired that and used it immediately because I'm not seeing it in the inventory anywhere. Which that's fine, but if I did use the rejuvenation core, I'm not really sure if that actually did anything for us. Like, healing now is 150 plus 150, and our health is at 273 at max, so one respite would fill us up well past what our full health is, which does make an argument to start getting our health higher. Although my good offense being a good defense strategy is working fairly well. And yeah, once again, I'm not really sure which direction I'm supposed to be going. You'd think that the glowing light here might be an indication that you're supposed to go this way, but it may just be an indication to look and see that there's a direction you can go. I guess maybe I could be following the compass. And always it feels like the compass may be hardcore programmed in certain areas. Like, it may not be a compass that directly points you in the direction of where the character is absolutely, as much as it points you in a pathfinding direction that they pre-rendered lines that would have been the way towards the boss, and the compass points to the closest dot on that line. Which for a video game, that probably would be a little bit more helpful. Oh.
What do you want? Please.
Noticeably, they're not popping up anything that says you've collected a certain number of humans, a reward is waiting for you at Haven. Like, you really don't have much of a reason to want to go back to Haven. Yeah. These little offshoot areas, I don't like the way they're laid out, because it's too easy to go the wrong way and then forget about the offshoot areas. Which I guess means I'd like the game to be a little bit more linear, where you would potentially get in a room and be locked in a room, like some of the early Zelda games, and then have to fight your way out of that room before you can escape. And in the act of fighting out your way out of a room, then you get a reward. I'm attacking each of these with a Y attack to do as much damage as possible. Is there something up there? No. I don't think there actually is. I severely doubt the humans will ever become allies to you in any useful way. Like, it would be interesting if they eventually handed you a gun. But that's pretty much all I would kind of expect from it, is that you might get some kind of ranged weapon from them, and then the maker would be able to perhaps make a better gun for you later on. Or the maker could combine human technology with maker technology. Like, at a certain level you are dealing with monsters that are feeding and collecting on souls. Alright. I assume what is happening here is that we're getting teased towards a boss fight that isn't going to happen quite yet. Still taking 2 swipes of the whip to kill him. And here we're getting some reminder that this is supposed to be on Earth with a incredibly tilted tower just sunken into the ground, which does kind of imply that the entire core of Earth has been compromised. I feel like even in the first game there was a decent amount of effort that I put into upgrading my attack to try and get those one-shot kills on lower level enemies, and I never actually got that up, the attack high enough. I wouldn't be surprised if that's because the game is actively increasing the defense and damage reduction of the enemies to balance itself out. But I would say if it is doing that, it's doing it at a decent level, because there is you still are feeling that story mode experience. I'm not dying ridiculous amounts. You can see these really tall trees in the middle of like 7-story buildings, or the remains of 7 stories of a building, which really highlights that it has been, I think, thousands of years. Although I think they probably said it's been 1,000 years since the apocalypse, or something, which sounds like a big amount of time, but maybe isn't enough time alone. You wouldn't expect monsters in 1,000 years to evolve naturally to this level, but maybe that's more of a magical influence. Alright. Alright. I definitely am getting these counter dodge attacks way more often. But I think that was a small version of the boss we will eventually fight. I don't think that was a boss fight. Like, it should be more obvious that it wasn't a boss fight, but there's a lot of this. And notice how the walls kind of bleed when you hit them. But yeah, an inconsistency here as far as what near a wall can be broken, what can't. Then we see like these train cars. And we're seeing concrete walls to give us hints, which almost we might get to a point where maybe we can crawl through that. That might be a shortcut of a different kind. Alright, well, overall, in this hour, we've made a decent amount of progress. We spent a bunch of souls, but now we seem to be getting more and more souls as we play. I still have the slight concern that we're closer to halfway through the game than you would think, and that we are just going to be shocked at some point where we end up fighting 2 or 3 of the 7 deadly sins in a row. Although we, at this point, also would have been fairly shocked if all of a sudden we capture all 7 of the 7 deadly sins and then go into an act 2 of a 2 or 3 act story, and we haven't actually even done a third of the game. I kind of feel like there were points in the first game where you got transported to entire different realms, and when you were in those different realms, they were fairly big sections, just disconnected from everything else. So it was almost like there's a mostly connected world, or a world that feels like it's mostly connected, and then there's completely disconnected sections. We still have 3 weapons, or 6 weapons to unlock, but noticeably I think the balance may be wrong here. If the chains and scorn, lance and scorn are specific to each hollow, and there's 4 hollows, then this is a different hollow for the Y, this is a different hollow for the Y, and then that leaves you with 4 empty spots, which doesn't mean the whip, has to mean the whips never get upgraded, and then maybe the weapons for the Y buttons do get upgraded, or we get a completely different weapon set. And I keep expecting to like find a gun, but maybe we don't get any kind of ranged weapon at all, because I guess right now I am pressing the B button and it's doing nothing. So that it feels like at some point there would be. Let's look at the control. B to interact is the only thing labeled on the control, and this might be a slight spoil. Yeah. We now know what all these buttons mean as they're labeled. But yeah. In that aim mode, we may never have a gun that shoots things. And inherently that has created a situation where there aren't collectibles or anything for you to shoot off in the distance. And so if there is something high up in the distance, you know you have to reach it one way or another to get up there and hit it, which keeps you more in direct control of the character, which is nice, but it gives you kind of the same gameplay mechanic instead of having a secondary gameplay mechanic like the first game. In the first game, you definitely saw things in the distance that you shot, enemies or collectibles. I'm not sure you actually shot a lot of collectibles in the distance though. A lot of times I think you probably still had things floating in the air that you had to jump and platform to. What this game probably would have benefited a lot from, if there hadn't been just as long of a break between the first, second, and third games, is taking the exact level layouts and designs of the first game and merging it into the third game. Just saying, hey, here's that dungeon again, although this time it's going to be full of different types of enemies, or the puzzles are going to be solved in a slightly different way, but just having 90% of the 3D modeling and level layout design already done to start off with would have probably helped quite a bit. It would have been harder to integrate the areas in Darksiders 2, but it wouldn't have been impossible. The game would have been potentially too large if you merged both Darksiders 1 and Darksiders 2 levels, but you could have picked and chosen quite a bit. The level designs here are much more curvy and round compared to the first game. Like there definitely was a castle in the first game where you were going into a square room and each room was perpendicular or parallel to that square room, and there was a door that you opened, and then you would walk from one door on the left side of the square room out the door on the right side, and you would walk actually through rooms to circle around as you unlocked different doors. Whereas we don't really see that here. It's more, there's a giant S curve that is actually just a long line that's been curved around to not make you realize that they otherwise would have been square rooms. And for the sewers that are supposed to be train yards, it's a little weird that they're this curvy, because you could have naturally said, oh well, we're just going to be following the tracks a lot of the times, and all the tracks are going to be parallel to each other. But yeah, I'm certainly looking for something that's a little bit more, because the pattern is getting a little repetitive at this point. And if it is going to be this repetitive, then I guess I'm looking for the game to just wrap itself up faster than I think it probably should. But if it's out of ideas, and if it just is going to be linear pathways towards a boss fight, and that's it. We aren't even really seeing a lot of reusing of the new hollow abilities. Like, ideally, every second or third room there should be something that the new hollow ability works with. And we haven't even done anything with the whirlwind ability, or the thunder ability, whatever it's called. And that certainly seems weird. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.